You're listening to The Riff, a podcast by North Point Church. There's a lot more to the Christian journey than what can be presented in a 30-minute time slot from a stage on Sunday morning. Our host and lead pastor, Jeremy Johnson, highlights the vision of North Point Church and the Christian journey through stories, interviews, and unfiltered faith ramblings. We hope the conversations will help you engage in how faith interacts with your life. I think we're ready. Let's go for it.
Welcome to another episode of The Riff. Today we're going to talk about parenting, and I have a conversation with my friends Matt and Sarah Hasselbeck. And if you're a football fan, you know that Matt is one of the voices for ESPN Game Day. And for many years, he was a starting quarterback in Seattle for the Seahawks. And that's where we got a chance to meet the Hasselbeck family. They were at the church that we were at before we moved to Missouri. Love how they parent, love how they just represent Jesus. But in this conversation, I think you're going to get some very practical tools, some nuggets that they drop, some resources of how to parent in a way that brings intentional culture, faith to the culture in your family. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for listening. Well, hey, welcome to another episode of The Riff. It's a podcast here that we're trying to throw out some helpful tools for the dozens who are listening, and we are glad that you're here. And today I've got some good friends that I am excited about today because we're going to be talking about parenting, and I've got Matt and Sarah Hasselbeck all the way from Boston right now. They're in Boston joining us. Matt and Sarah, thanks for being with us on The Riff.
What's up? 1, 2, 3, Jeremy J.
That's right.
Come on. It's good to see you. Now, here's the deal. You're probably super nervous because, like I said, we have literally dozens of people who can see this. So just try and be normal and don't freak out, okay?
We're not used to being in front of crowds.
I know it. So, well, I want to talk to you all about parenting. Before we do, I want to let our Missouri crowd know who we're talking to. So I know in Boston, no introduction needed. I know in Seattle, no introduction needed. But the Hasselbecks, we got to know each other in Seattle. I was at a church pastoring in Seattle. We got a chance to get to know you all. For our Missouri friends, here's what you all need to know. We have the legend of Boston College athletics with us. Someone who set the career record in total wins, I believe, 41 wins, was elected into the Boston College Hall of Fame. Absolute legend in Boston College sports. Her name is Sarah, and we are glad to have you. You were a field hockey hero. Is that right? Field hockey?
You know what? Now, so many years removed, yes, I am a hero. I like to build my brand a little bit more. I kind of... When you get older, you're like, make yourself sound a little bit more. It was so much more exciting and did so much better than, yes, it was a great time. I had great teammates. I loved my experience playing collegiate sports.
She's
you were the goalie.
She's really being humble. She's really being humble. Like when we were dating in college, she was seriously the star player, like from freshman of the year, like all that kind of stuff. And I was not even the star. I wasn't even the backup. I was like the backup to the backup, basically for 4 years, 3.5 years. And
so you played sports too?
Yeah,
I played football, kind of. I was on the team. I was holding for extra points and field goals, and that was about the extent of it. But like to our kids now, like they'll introduce their mom. This is what one of our daughters will say. They'll say, "Oh, this is my mom. She played field hockey at BC, and she went into the BC Hall of Fame 16 years before my dad, even though they were the same age." So that's how our kids introduce her.
That's great. Now you did 2018. You got into the BC Hall of Fame as well.
Eventually, yes. Yeah. I think I got in sort of as like, well, this is Sarah's husband, who also,
it's just awkward if they keep you out. So eventually they got to put you in.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and Matthew's brother's actually going in a couple weeks, November 19th. I think he gets inducted.
That's great.
So I don't know how many years that is after Sarah, but it's I think it's 20 years after you. Yeah. And we were all there together. So it just, that gives you an idea how good she was at field hockey. And most people don't even know what field hockey is. So it's not everywhere in America. It's a huge sport worldwide. And then obviously certain places in America, but
it was very humbling. Once we got married and right out of college, we moved to Green Bay, Wisconsin. They'd never heard of the sport. We moved to Seattle. We lived there for 10 years. No one had ever heard of the sport. So kind of what my identity was at that time just disappeared, evaporated.
Wow.
And I didn't really revisit or pick up a stick or even watch a game and, maybe 15, 20 years out of college.
Now both your girls play lacrosse at Boston College.
Right.
Now, I've not YouTubed and compared both field hockey and lacrosse. A lot of similarities?
No similarities. But like back in the day, before women's sports, before Title IX, before women's sports got the funding that they have now, like for example, Sarah, when she was playing field hockey at Boston College, they shared a coach with the lacrosse team. So
locker room and uniforms.
Shared a coach, a locker room, and uniforms, just because it wasn't, the budget. The budgets were different back then. But now it's very, very different. Boston College has a great lacrosse program. Our girls are excited to be a part of it. And they both have roommates that play on the field hockey team. So that's our little connection to field hockey still.
That's great.
Is like the immediate roommates are players.
Well, that's great. Well, I want to talk about parenting. And so you have 3 kids. You have 2 at BC, both playing lacrosse there. And then you have 2 girls in college and then a son who's a sophomore.
That's right. Yeah. And so, he's home alone now with us. So for the longest time, you have teenage girls, a lot of the conversation at the dinner table, a lot of the conversation in the house is about the girls and their lives and whatever. And then the youngest brother is just sort of, oh, and you too. And now that the girls are gone out of school, the dinner table is the 3 of us, and we are just diving into every question. We want to know about every teacher, every class, every friend. We want to know about the friends' pets, dogs, likes, dislikes. And he's just sort of like, we're on like maybe day 4 now where he's like, I am really not used to all this attention. But we're definitely enjoying it.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's lucky. It's lucky to get this opportunity just to be with just the one. It's totally a new season for us. But to have this focused time on Henry is, it's a special thing that we have right now.
That's great. Well, let's go back on the parenting train to y'all got married while it was 2000, is the year 2000-ish? 2000. Okay. Were you in Seattle at the time? You were dating through college, through Green Bay? Did you get married?
Yeah. So like the quick version is, after college, Sarah became an accountant and she was staying in Boston to get her CPA license. I got drafted to the Green Bay Packers. It was a tough team to make. I wasn't really sure if I was going to make it. And, I ended up being on the practice squad that year. The following year, we were engaged. And then the following year, we were married. And so I was in Green Bay for 3 years. Sarah was there the last year. And when she moved out there, she was working for a startup bank. And so, we didn't have any kids. We were straight out of college and we were just kind of trying to make it. I didn't know if I had a future in the NFL. She had worked really hard. We knew she had a future in accounting if she wanted it. And then accounting is one of those majors where it can kind of take you to a lot of different opportunities. But she had sort of given up her dream of, waiting for the next round of the Olympics. The Olympics were in Atlanta. She was sort of like, on the development, like alternate for that Atlanta Olympics. And then it would have been another 4 years after that. And then, just in terms of me following my dream with football and then maybe starting a family, that's kind of, what happened. And we ended up having pregnant with our first child and having our first child when we got traded to the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, we got married in June and we were pregnant in January.
Wow.
With our first.
So young parents,
clueless, like clueless. We were we were clueless about everything. So we get traded to the Seattle Seahawks and we have this child. It's my first time being the starter and we have this child in October and I'm hurt. We're living next door to a fire station, which was like, sirens and ambulances all night. It's like, the baby's up, we're no one's sleeping. So we have this baby in October and literally the only thing that went smooth is that the baby was born on a Tuesday, which is the player's day off. And other than that, nothing was smooth. Like after the first day in the hospital, they were like, okay, you guys can go home now. We were like, we're not qualified.
Right.
Like we don't know what to do. Our closest relative is probably in like Chicago. We're in Seattle. So luckily Sarah's mom came out from Connecticut. And then, we at least had like some idea of like what to do. But like literally I was going to like the fire station trying to get firefighters to help me put the car seat in right. Our baby was so small, like she didn't fit in even like the baby clothes. She was so tiny. Like we were literally considering where like I don't know, like going and shopping for doll clothing. I'm like, what do I do? I had no clue. We had no idea what we were doing.
I would remember just staring at her those first weeks and just, they say this goes by so fast. Like maybe I can blink and she'll be 18. Like I just didn't know what to do. It's like no one tells you your life completely changes. And I just remember being like, okay, I can't wait till she's 18 and then I can have a life again. So I kind of resigned myself to like, all right, now I'm her mom. I got to do this for the next 18 years and then I'll have a life after that. I remember really just feeling that way those first couple of months of having a baby.
But it was so awesome too. Like it was greater than anything we could have ever imagined.
Yeah, everything changed. Everything was about this baby. Her changing tables, the dining room table is just, taking care of her, and that was our focus.
But I mean, people like that first year as I'm the starting quarterback in Seattle, I should be getting ready to play like the Raiders and the Vikings and the 49ers and teams like this. And literally any free moment I had, I was putting together a changing table and putting together a crib that didn't come with instructions in a language that I spoke. And, it was like,
IKEA.
It was a challenging year. And luckily there were teammates, husbands and wives.
Right. Well, that was critical to us. We fell into a spot where there were some women that came around me and he would leave for work and I would go to their house with the baby. And they would say like, okay, this is how we're going to put her down for a nap. You're going to feed her. They were encouraging me to continue to breastfeed when it was hard. God really came around me. I didn't even realize it was happening with some women who were teaching me how to mother and how to just take care of a baby, take care of a child, take care of and were loving me at the same time. Because I think, and then telling me, how's your husband? Are you treating him well? Like just things that I had never even thought. I just had these older women, and actually one of them was younger than me and had already had 2 kids. And early 20-year-old. And she just had such wisdom already about thinking about how's Matthew doing when she could see how consumed I was with just getting through the feedings of the day.
Wow.
We were very lucky.
But even just going back to that, like there were some parenting things that were parenting things, but they were really relationship things. Like I was trying to be this great husband. Some of the guys on my team were like, hey, what's your diaper ratio? And I'm like, what do you mean a diaper ratio? Like how many are you changing compared to how many is she changing? And I was like, I don't know. It's like probably 1 to 10. And like, okay, you got to out.
Who was doing more?
Well, she was at first. Then I found out what diaper ratio was. Then I was on this mission to win diaper ratio. Like, no, I'm going to get 6 for every 4 she gets. Like, it was like I was trying to like outserve her. But then one thing that would happen is like, who's getting up in the middle of the night? So I'm like, sometimes I'm like, well, I'll get up because the baby's crying. And she's like, well, I'm going to get up. And then it would almost cause this rift. Like, why are you up and I'm up? Like both of us don't need to be up. Like if you're going to be up, I'm going to bed. Or if I'm going to be up, you need to go to bed. And so like there were some relationship things that we had to learn and grow that came out of sort of this amazing thing that was a gift of a child. But we had to sort of get a game plan and understand why it would she had to understand why it would be offensive to me that she stayed awake when I was up. It was like what I was hearing, what she was saying was, no, I don't want you to be up. I'll be up. And what I was hearing was, you're not qualified to be up. Like, I don't trust you with this beautiful baby. So there were like some things that we really were just so young and immature. We just had to sort of learn as we were.
I would say that would be like one of the biggest things we learned for that time period of parenting was that dads do it different, and to let him do his way and not nitpick him or freak out if it wasn't the way I wanted it done, or if the baby was awake when the baby should have been sleeping. And let him, dads do it different. And that when I left Annabelle with him, it wasn't that he was babysitting her, it was like, it's okay. He's full parent, just as I'm full parent. I'm not like, oh, thank you, Matthew, for watching her. That was fully his responsibility too. But I took it more like, Annabelle's on me. I'm in charge of all this. And then he's just babysitting her when I ran to go get something. So it was kind of a weird thing, just when one person's out of the home all day long, the other, there's a dynamic with who's in charge of the baby and who's in charge of what in the household.
And when neither of us is sleeping hardly at all, we're not at our best.
Yeah.
So it was good.
A couple of things in there. I remember saying the word babysitting once to Leanne, indicating what I had just done. And she reminded me of that, Sarah. She's like, no. You did not babysit. You parented. There's a difference. I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't get the credit I was thinking I was getting in that moment. A couple of things. One, I sense this, taking this competitive nature that you both have and being able to say, okay, you mentioned it this way. Can we try and outserve each other? Right? That's trying to take this natural deal and say, okay, how can we point this in a positive direction? I love that. Now, there's two things. One is you mentioned faith. Walk with us a little bit. How did faith become a priority for you all, and even in your relationship that led to your parenting?
I know it was a priority. I mean, it was the lens that we were seeing everything through.
And we really grew in our faith together as a couple in Green Bay. We were plugged into our church. We were plugged into couples Bible studies. I was doing a men's study. She was doing a woman's study. And so we just kind of made that sort of a priority. We were still young and immature, and we didn't really know. In fact, if people were to say to me, what was the best thing in your 18-year NFL career? What was the best thing that happened, or the best thing? I would say maybe one of the best things we ever did is this conference we went to that was sort of like a Christian conference that you would go to with your spouse. The irony is we went when I was playing for the Green Bay Packers when we were newly married.
Okay.
And no kids, pregnant, but no kids. We went and we were like, these people are weird. We're never coming back here. This is the worst.
Yeah.
And
I thought it was a leadership conference. I would agree to go just because I thought it was like a leadership conference.
And they were like, oh, it's at Disney World. We're living in Wisconsin. It wasn't at Disney World. It was like somewhere in Florida. You would drive by the exit of Disney World. It was like, if you wanted to stay an extra few days, you could maybe go to Disney. But the moral of the story was we were just so immature. So now I would say it was the best thing that I know about from our entire time in the NFL. But early in our years at the NFL, we were like, who are all these people with leather Bibles with zippers, what, we just felt so outsiders. We were kind of like, did you bring a Bible?
Right.
With a
and
zipper?
They were singing about God being their friend. I'm a friend of God. I'm like, what is that about?
Wow.
So, we were really, when Annabelle came into the world, I was super young in my faith. I wanted it. I knew there was a God out there and I wanted it, but I didn't know who he was. And I didn't know how he was really, what power he had in my life at that point.
Yeah, and I think for me, I was in a different boat, further along spiritually, mature wise, but still nowhere where I needed to be. And I've told the story a few times where my role as a Christian, I'd say on my football team, I was really, really good at introducing players on our team to the chaplain and being like, okay, see ya, do your job, buddy. And what I realized was, and I really didn't even realize this until I got to Seattle, was it wasn't the chaplain's job to go reach the rest of the team. The chaplain's job really was sort of to disciple me, to then go make disciples, and to disciple me to sort of now we as a couple, we're discipling others. And so that was a real shift in how I looked at things. And then when you're a parent for the first time, now you're not just responsible for you and your friend group and then the people that you can touch. You are solely entrusted for raising up and training this child. It is on you. And so you need to put effort and work into that. And we were studying parents and their kids and all right, I like how their kids are, I like that. I don't like that. We were really, I don't want to say we were studying them like we were studying an NFL defense, but we kind of were. We were just sort of examining
we were
everything.
Students of how to parent.
Yeah. Now, did you have people who came into your life? Because we have a lot of people who are listening who they don't come from maybe a pedigree of great parenting. And so when we put this challenge is, now that you're following Christ, you ought to parent in a different way. That could be overwhelming. Did you have people that came along? What was helpful for people that people did in your life?
I think we had a lot of people praying for us, because the people that were in our lives at the time were absolutely unbelievable as parents. I mean, really, really fortunate. But like, it wasn't just them. It was like those same people would say, like, for example, the father-daughter bond is stronger. Like my whole time growing up, I was like, oh, I want a son, I want a son, I want a son. And then all these dads that were in our lives are like, oh, you have no idea how great it is to have a daughter. You have no idea. It's so much better than having a son. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like every movie I've ever saw was about like father, son, like, what are you talking about? And so these players and coaches, they would give me these books on father-daughter. And I'm like, there are really that many books out there about father-daughter? And then you're realizing some common themes. Like the number one thing I can do for my daughters is to love their mom in such a way that they think that this is the standard from where like all relationships start. So like if I'm short with her, I raise my voice at her, I slam a door, or I, whatever, they think that that's normal. And that's what they're going to look for in their spouse. That's what they're going to think the standard of normal is, versus me honoring her and showing her respect and not making jokes about her, or just like really building her up in such a way. And like, this was just, didn't matter the book. Like it was themes like that over and over and over again. Right. And now I'm looking at some of these men that I want to be like, some of these families that I want our family to be like. And I'm saying, oh yeah, here are some common threads. These kids aren't the kids that are eye rolling their mom and dad, like, well, why not? And so, not that we are perfect at it. We make a lot of mistakes. Our kids would tell you that, but for sure, I felt like I at least had a playbook, and I had people that were sort of emulating it around us. And we might have even had that growing up, but we just weren't paying attention. It was just like, it wasn't.
Yeah. I think what I'm thankful for is that we just, without knowing it, we were taking advantage of the things that were just right there at our fingertips. I didn't say no to going to Bible study on Wednesdays when my heart was like, maybe I could go get my nails done, or this is the time that I could be doing something else. Like for some reason, I went on Wednesdays. So I was around women who were pursuing the Lord. I went to church on Sundays, and my kids were in church school. So I'm getting parenting input from all these different places. And his coaches we were around who were Christians and following the Lord, and we were watching them raise their kids. So it was just we were taking advantage of everything that was in our immediate environment, whatever that was. Yeah. We weren't, and because we cared about what they were doing, we were paying attention to it. The only other thing I would say is that, I was such a new Christian when my children were first being born, and as I was wanting them to know who God was, and buying the little Bibles and Christian little storybooks, and listening to Christian music in the car, and watching Christmas Christian cartoons, I was learning who God was through all this kid stuff. And we had Christian babysitters, and I had never been around a young woman who, like, I could never see myself at their age, a young adult woman caring so much about the Lord and making choices because of their convictions to be obedient to God. And having these babysitters in my life, taking care of my kids, I was kind of learning from them that it's possible to raise a daughter or a child to have such a passion for the Lord.
Yeah. All of our babysitters they were like Young Life teachers, and we'd never even heard of Young Life. Like, we grew up in the East Coast. We didn't know what it was. People were looking at us funny, but like, we just knew there was something special about all these girls. And so some of it was just sort of like luck of the draw for us, kind of like we can't take any credit for it. But then I think other things, if I was looking back at the stuff that I'm so glad that I did, it wasn't convenient to go to Bible study before everything started. Like, work was hard. Work started sometimes at 7. So Bible study.
So you worked more than 1 day a week. Is that?
We really were bad. We were bad. So we had to work a lot. So
I've seen your playbook once, and thick. Like, you had to memorize. You're so busy, but you kept serving.
Yeah, and that's kind of like one of the things that hit me like a ton of bricks when I was there. Like one of my excuses was, well, I don't really know the Bible that well. And so how could I share it with somebody? But like, that was the whole thing about playing quarterback in the NFL. It was like, you didn't need to just know the playbook well enough for you to run the plays. At some point, as a veteran on the team or as a mature player on the team, it was now my job to not only know my plays, but like to be able to teach other people to play. So we have we drafted a quarterback every year. So when that young quarterback would come in, I would be the guy that would be like, all right, guys, we got Brown right slot, A right, 322, Y stick nod, Z shallow cross. Okay. You're just going to go 1 to 1A. You got the tailback to the tight end. You got the Z shallow if it's not there. And you got the wide if it's, it's all covered. I could do that so easily. So like, what's my excuse for not knowing 1 Peter 3:15? You know what I mean? Or 2 Corinthians 12:9. Like, it's just about the effort that you're putting into it and how much you value it. And so for me, I just was looking at it like, oh, that's the coach's job. And then when I realized, and I was just an average player, I was someone who couldn't give away or share or tell other people what to do. But when I realized, no, I'm the quarterback, this is my team, I'm taking ownership of this playbook, everything changed on the field. So around the same time that it was sort of starting to change on the field is I think when it really, really unlocked spiritually in terms of maturity. But for me, it took the hard work of making it a priority, even when it wasn't necessarily what you're not trying to add more to your schedule sometimes, but investing in that was huge for me.
Let me hit a couple of rapid fire questions as we kind of wind down here. One is this: what are some resources, maybe some Christian resources, or some, how did you create Christian culture in your family? Are there some tips for some people who are looking to add that to their family's recipe?
Okay. So a couple of things that we've stolen from other people. Okay. One thing is prayer road. Okay. So our kids didn't take a bus to school. We would drive them to school. And on our commute somewhere, there was always something called prayer road. The whole car knew it. The whole family knew it. When we hit a certain road, time to pray. And they would pray, everyone's eyes are closed except for the driver, obviously. And you would hear what was on their heart. You would hear, I have a big math test today. You're like, oh, okay. I hope I make a friend today. I hope that my sister, you find out which kids are praying for their siblings, which kids are just praying for themselves. So prayer road was something that we stole from someone. And that was one example of something awesome.
I think going to church was Matthew was very adamant about it. He cared about it. And I was a little bit more loosey-goosey on it, but because he cared so much about it and I wanted to honor him, I made sure I brought the kids on Sundays when he wasn't coming. And just that consistency and going, when you're sometimes you walk into church, your arms are crossed, you're like, and then it's amazing how the worship time, God just meets you. You just got to step in the door. You got to, bring your kids. You have no idea what God can do in your kids' lives and your lives. So going to local church.
And it's so competitive. It's competitive for that. So
as the kids get older, it gets very
right. And with athletic kids in sports, sometimes you maybe have to miss and get creative. But there were other times when it wasn't convenient, and we're finding a way. And I don't know if necessarily I would say the huge value is in maybe what you hear or experience or even the worship of that day. It's almost like, well, I know that my parents drew a line in the sand and hey, we're gonna go when we can go.
Right. And it's not easy to draw lines in the sand with your kids. It's not fun to hear them complain or not want to be, not want to go but that's your job as a parent. You got to do all the unfun things. And just like when they didn't feel like going to practice because it was pouring rain or it was cold or they were tired, they had too much work, they had this test and you made them go, you're going to practice. You got to go to practice. That's where you get better. Just like church, you got to go. Even when it's not fun to go, not easy to go. You just had a hockey game and now you're getting out of wet hockey gear right into church, get ready to go to church. And you've already been up since 6, I don't want to do that, but you do. You just got to do the hard stuff.
Yeah. And some other things just practical things, rapid fire. Yeah. Sorry. But some playing Christian music in the car was something for me. I didn't realize the impact that it had. And then all of a sudden we're in the car and you hear a child singing along the words, like you don't even think they're listening. You know, they're on like a device and you're playing the music. And, you know, so like, I think looking back, there's some things that we, I don't know, like stumbled into that were really good.
Yeah. And I think when you're for me, when I was parenting, and say there's an issue with another kid, you know, you go a different way. A Christian is different. And the way you're going to approach the issue with your kid is different. And if you don't know how to do that in how God wants you to be obedient to handling a situation, then you have to go find some time alone and pray about it or read about it or talk to someone older or wiser and say, okay, my kid's got this issue. How do I handle it with them? Just so the issues that when our kids would have issues, I think we handle it in a different way. We chose to pray for someone that was super mean to them, or, you know, someone that you want to be like, yeah, you know, you do this, you know, like just that you would go at it the world's way, or handle a situation with a coach a different way. You know, I think that was a thing we did through parenting with them. I think we tried to handle the issues that came up. And how are we going to be obedient to God with the words we say, with the attitude of our heart? I think that's one of the parenting things.
I think another thing that worked for me as a dad and a husband that I think helped our family is we stole this from someone also. It was kind of having a concentration line on my commute home from work. So like I'm coming home from work and every time I passed this restaurant or this traffic light or whatever, I know it's now time for me to leave work behind. Wow. Okay, whatever was going on, and just sort of get prepared for those first 5 minutes when I step in the door. Maybe it's like, Daddy's home, or maybe it's like, hey, how was your day? Tell me what went on with the kids. Tell me. Or sometimes for guys, sometimes the harder thing is she'll be like, well, how was your day? And instead of me saying, fine, you know, like she wants to know something. She's been at home thinking about like how my day went. Like I need to give her something. So being intentional, not like coming in on the phone or coming in like, oh, I just need to put my feet up. I've been sitting in traffic. I've been just being really intentional about that first 5 minutes kind of can set the tone for like the whole rest of the evening with her and with kids.
And we spent a lot of time on our marriage. You know, like we said, we went to this conference every year, and it's hard. When you have vacation time, do you really want to go to a conference? You know, but like it was just something we did. We carved out that time. We made it a commitment, and we worked on our marriage. And it's some people that might sound hokey, but it paid dividends.
Yeah. And an example of that would just be like, you know, like when you go on vacation. Okay. So like recently, like we had 1 week of vacation this summer. We went on vacation with other former and current NFL quarterbacks and their families, basically. And basically we just devoted an hour every morning to some sort of Bible study. Now we had someone there that was like super qualified, but it was a 4-day vacation essentially. And we went through the book of Ruth. And first day was Ruth 1, second day was Ruth 2, you know, third, you know, so four books in Ruth. And it was from 9 to 10. But like, it just kind of set the tone. So whether it was conversation at lunch was different, conversation at dinner was different. We just sort of made it a priority. And you know, I'm sure some people would be like an hour, like it'd be like, there were people that were like, man, I wish we did more of this. But just, it was almost like this mindset of, you know, I don't know if it was like killing 2 birds with 1 stone, but like we were growing spiritually and on vacation and growing in relationship with other people that are living the same kind of life, just in different cities and with the same kind of challenges. I know it was incredibly helpful to us. And there were some parents who were like, the kids were a little bit older than our kids. And there's some parents, the kids were a little younger than our kids. We were learning from everybody.
Let me land with just a couple questions, then a couple observations. What would you say to a parent who's listening who feels like I've not been intentional? Is it too late for me?
No, I mean, I don't know how old the kids would be, you know, like, for example, you know, I don't know the age. I know for us, we benefited sort of, how should I say it? I know for us, we did some things that were great, that we realized were great, that we realized we failed and we should have been doing this years and years earlier. Sarah mentioned like the children's Bible. Like we were reading the children's Bible to our kids. Well, one year we learned about this thing called the Action Bible, which is like a comic book Bible, really, I think geared really well for boys. We hadn't been doing it. We just kind of had leftover books from our girls. And we were reading like, oh, this is what happened in the Bible to our son. I mean, he was kind of like, this is like, okay, it's like a fairy tale. Action Bible came out and it's really like more like what's in the real Bible. And he's like, I can't get enough of this. I find myself yelling at my son, hey, turn your lights out and go to bed. Put your Bible away. It was like, so we had really been failing, but so there were things that I don't know, like we just kept, as we were learning, as we were growing, as we were getting better, we were just age appropriate sharing. So
awesome.
I would say, I mean, never, ever too late to start something. You can start something this afternoon. There's like, I come up with things. All right, now I'm going to do this with the girls, like you could I just look back at myself. I mean, look where God's taken me. I didn't grow up with any of this. I didn't know any of it, and and God loved me. And God loves my kids. He loves each of them. So if God puts something on your heart, like, oh, I want to be intentional about this now. Amazing. He just put that on your heart just at this perfect time for right now. Like you have no idea that this is just the right time for that. Yeah. So don't ever be discouraged.
I think of it, it's a lot like a workout program. It's like, you got to start somewhere. You're not going to start with the marathon. You might start with, I think a great place to start, like just to give workout advice here. Hey, just break a sweat every day. Break a sweat. Like whatever you got to do, like maybe even almost break a sweat. There's such value in that. In terms of like growing spiritually, there are so many things out there. I started with this thing called Our Daily Bread. Okay, it was a game that a teammate of mine named Danny Hurtful brought to our locker room in the group with the Green Bay Packers. It takes about 90 seconds to read this story, maybe less. It's called Our Daily Bread. You can find it in every church in America, probably. It's on everybody's phone if you want it. It's free. And it's just like this little nugget that gets you started. That's where kind of I started in our locker room. And that's a lot of the times where like a little nugget that I was like equipped to like help our kids with. And it was like, hey, can you guys read this for me today? I know this will be valuable to you. I know it will be. And
you can get that. It'll read it to you like in the car on the way to school with the kids. You can put that on it. It's like a 3-minute little devotional. There's a million different things, but there's Our Daily Bread. And sometimes I'm not the best like Bible preacher teaching the word of God to my kids. I don't really know. I'm still learning. So for me, it was helpful to me. Like, I'm not sure what to do. There's tools out there for your kids. You just got to press play,
So it's not too late to start.
Never.
So then I have a follow-up then is what would you say to a 40-ish-year-old pastor out there who feels like I have the ability to play in the NFL, but I've never been noticed? Is it too late?
I would say it's probably too late. But listen, there are other jobs. There are other jobs in sports. Okay. And I tell people all the time, you would never want a team made up of all Patrick Mahomes. Like as good as Patrick Mahomes is, you don't want Patrick Mahomes playing left tackle.
Hey, you're talking to Chief Kingdom right here. We've got Chief listeners. Yeah. But you're
exactly. Right. So, and I don't want a whole team of Tyreek Hills. Like I just don't. Like and so, it takes all different types. Our chaplain for when I was in Seattle, our chaplain looked like a retired WWE wrestler that should be in one of the Harry Potter books. He just, you didn't, when you first met him, you weren't like, you weren't sure who he was. Like, oh, you're the chaplain? Really? But the guy is so amazing at making disciples. Yeah. He's so amazing at teaching the word. And so like, if you were to say to me, who are the 5 most valuable people of your time in Seattle? I think he's on the list. He was just so good at his job. He couldn't play quarterback. He couldn't play wide receiver. He didn't, but he's walking around with Super Bowl ring from their time in Seattle. And so his impact on the Seattle franchise was so big from when we were there, after we were there, before we were there. Yeah. So I don't think you have a future in necessarily playing quarterback, but you could help in some way. Okay. Even if it's moral support.
I appreciate that.
So you fight the negativity on social media. That's a job in and of itself.
I will fight it. You mentioned the Super Bowl 2006. True or false question, Matt? Darrell Jackson, was it pass interference?
Wow. Wow. We have a rule in our house. You're not allowed to criticize officials.
No.
It's like a rule.
So that would make answering this question awkward.
So no, the answer to the question is you're not allowed to blame officials in this house. So
that's true.
I will say no. Whatever the official calls is what the official calls. It's part of the game. Let it go.
If I were the official, here's a ring right there. Hey, I'm thankful for the two of you. Two observations from our time in Seattle is I noticed, Matt, you understood your influence in the Seattle community in that season. And so you would position yourself at the front door. So when kids would come in, they would see you, you'd open doors, you'd greet, you'd welcome. You knew what this meant. And you leveraged that for an opportunity for someone to be excited about church. I saw kids ask you to sign their Bible. I'm thinking, they know you didn't write that, but they were excited to connect you with faith. And I always appreciated you would, whether it's bringing friends from the team, whether it's using your influence in a way that would help people be excited about the mission, you did it. And that was a big deal. Sarah, you would serve all the time, consistently. And whether the team won or lost, you'd be in there helping clean the church on Tuesday mornings and just making it a priority. And the way you all pointed the arrows out, those are things that we want to be true about all of our North Pointers. And thanks for modeling that. I feel like the way you represent Jesus makes him so attractive to others. And just as a fellow Christian, love how you do that. In every stage, every platform, you point the arrows out, and it's a big deal. So, and congratulations, October on a Monday Night Football game, Ring of Honor. Matthew Hasselbeck, well-deserved, excited about that. And thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for being with us during this time. Love you guys.
Thanks, Jeremy.
I feel the same about you, Jeremy, and your wife.
Awesome. But you guys have a great day. Thanks for listening to another episode of The Riff. A lot of resources. Take a couple of them. Start today. And I know everyone around you is going to win when you do that. So thanks so much for the Hasselbecks.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. Submit a question for the podcast at northpointchurch.tv/podcast. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.